most of the images, the stunning images you're going to see tonight, are real images of the planets taken from the Earth, from a spacecraft flying by, from orbit or from the surface, like we've just seen of Mars. But nothing is as dynamically complex as the Earth itself. This is a time-lapse of 6 months of the Indian Ocean as viewed from orbit. Apart from 24 Apollo astronauts, the furthest any human has gone away from the surface of our Earth is a few hundred kilometers. So whether you're an astronaut or aboard a space station, which is in orbit above the Earth, that's about the distance between Sheffield and Edinburgh. The space station orbits the Earth every 90 minutes, and so it goes at 45 minutes of daytime, followed by 45 minutes of nighttime, as you can see in this time-lapse over cities on Earth. When we look out at our nearest neighbour, the Moon, from the Earth, it looks quite small. But then when we look at the Earth and the Moon together, we find that the Earth is only about 4 times larger than the Moon. This is a view from a spacecraft en route to Jupiter, with the Moon, the far side, as viewed from the Earth of the Moon in that picture. When we see the Moon, we see the same side. It takes a month to go around, and we see the same side facing the Earth at all times. It shines, or appears to shine, not because it is luminous, but just actually because it's just reflecting, its rocky surface is reflecting the solar light. In the same way that this very famous shot of Earthrise from orbit around the Moon was by the Apollo 8 astronauts. So the Earth too and the Moon are simply reflecting the sun's light. This is Gene Cernan, the last human to walk on another world in 1972 from Apollo 17. So the Moon looks small because it's quite far away. It's about 400,000 kilometers from the Earth, which is a long way, and in fact it's just about big enough to fit in all the other planets in our solar system. But the Moon is our closest neighbour. In comparison, the Sun lies 400 times further away than the Moon. Mercury is the planet closest to the Sun. It's very similar to our own Moon, except that its daytime is incredibly hot, but its nighttime is crazily cold. Venus, the weather forecast is cloudy and hot. How hot? Hot enough to melt lead. And the pressure at the surface is 90 times that of the Earth. Of all the planets beyond the Earth, Mars is the closest to our own planet. But even on Mars, the temperature in the daytime is something like Antarctica in winter. Jupiter is by far the largest of our planets in our solar system. Here is with Io, a spacecraft which went past these two en route to Pluto. And that was a volcano erupting on Io there. Saturn is famous because it's a gas giant surrounded by a beautiful ring system. The rings are made of tiny particles of ice. Uranus, the next planet out, rather than spins on its axis, it kind of rotates, it kind of rolls. And so, because it's so far from the Sun, at the poles, it has 42 years of daytime, followed by 42 years of nighttime. Neptune has the fastest wind of all the planets in our solar system. The speed is comparable to that of a jet airliner. So on the same scale, we have our Moon, Mercury, very similar to our own Moon, followed up by the size of Mars. So these are all the rocky planets with a real surface. Venus, Earth's evil twin, our own Earth, and then we get into the ice giants. Neptune and Uranus are icy worlds. And then the largest gas giants are Saturn and Jupiter. How big is our solar system? Well, this is an image taken from an orbit around Saturn of the Earth. The arrow is pointing to all of the Earth, all of humanity is in that tiny dot, 1,500 million kilometers away. Apart from the big planets, there are lots of smaller bodies. This is the best current image from Hubble of Pluto. Its big moon Charon and 2 smaller moons. But next year, there's going to be a flyby. This is a close-up view of a smallish asteroid, a few hundred kilometers in size, about a tenth of the size of Mars, called Vesta. Really small asteroids, like Eros here, this is about as big as a mountain. And it's got a very weird shape. So pretty much all the planets and the asteroids orbiting the Sun in a relatively thin plane, mostly almost circular, but some objects rotate in a very eccentric orbit. Comets in particular have relatively eccentric orbits. They live most of their times out in a very cold part of our solar system, and then they heat up as they come towards the Sun. This is a picture taken only a couple of weeks ago from a European probe called Rosetta, which is now in orbit around this. And this is a comet. It looks kind of like an asteroid. We used to think of comets as dirty snowballs. They're more like icy dirt balls. And when these things get hot, get close to the Sun, they tend to leave these beautiful trails. This is Comet McNaught a couple of years ago. So as well as planets, comets, big asteroids, there's lots of little rocks. And when those rocks come into our Earth's atmosphere, sometimes they skirt the edge. And this is what happened over Russia last year, where a meteor fireball just skirted their atmosphere, broke up, caused lots of broken glass. This is meteor crater in Arizona, where a larger body, maybe 100 meters across, crashed to Earth 10,000 years ago. So 99.9% of the mass of our solar system is in the Sun. How big is the Sun? Well, we could fit in quite comfortably 1 million Earths. And for my next part of my voyage, we'll be looking at the birth and life of stars.